Hello and welcome. In this lecture, as you can see here, I no longer have the engine version 4.12. So if I want to be taking this course, I want to basically be doing it with one of the engine versions I've got. So I've got to figure out how to upgrade the Battle Tank repo to 4.19, and that's what we're going to be able to do by the end of this lecture. And we're also going to fix a few errors that are in the logs and in the compilation while we're at it. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Okay, so to start the upgrade process, the first thing we need to do is open up our U project. So navigate to your directory of the project you're trying to upgrade and open up the U project. And then Unreal will prompt you with a version selector because you don't have the same version as your U project. So you can go ahead and select the version you want and click OK, and that will tell Unreal, in fact, it will store something in the config telling Unreal what version it should use, and then it's going to try and generate the project and build it, and it won't manage because there is an error in the build configuration files. And you may get any number of these errors, by the way. Some of them won't happen if you're upgrading between certain engine versions, but this is the worst case. So you're going to get errors in some of the files. And for this, you need to maybe dig around in the Unreal forums to find solutions. You could try doing it that way, or you could just go to the GitHub for this course and have a look at the upgrade lectures, and you can find upgrade lectures like this one lingered around in the different repos, and basically attached to this lecture is going to be the upgrade instructions that I go through, because you can just look at the code changes. Okay, so you can go and see, for example, that battletank.target.cs has changed, and we now have to add or remove the lines that are showing in this diff. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing I notice is I need to add base target, so let's go ahead and open up this file on my disk and see what we need to change. So here is my Visual Studio code, and what I'm saying here is that I need to add a base open brackets target here after this constructor, so it's calling up to the base constructor in C#, and then we need to add a line here, so I'm just going to copy that line and add it in. So add extra module names dot add battle tank, and then I can remove the target rules. Those are no longer needed. So that should now be in line with this commit, and you can do a similar thing for the Battle Tank editor. Now this is obviously revision, you've done this sort of stuff before, but it's always good to revise things a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to go through very quickly. It's very much the same process that I just did, adding the base target here as well, like so, just to match up with this file. And then finally I'll open up the final file, which is just a little bit different, which is the battletank.build.cs. If I have a look at the diff, you can see not so much has changed, except that this line has changed the argument from target info to read-only target rules. So let's make sure that that line is exactly the same. I'm just going to copy and paste the new line. And otherwise, nothing else here has changed. It has remained pretty much the same the way it was. So that's the way to do these upgrades. In my opinion, is probably the best way, is like refer to the course and have a look at the upgrade lectures. They're often towards the end of the GitHub, so you can find them very easily, and you can have a look at the diff and see what you need to change. And once you've changed it, if everything has gone swimmingly and smoothly, in fact, if you'd looked at these errors, you can see they kind of mention what the errors are. It's a little bit hard to see, but it's saying that it's inaccessible due to its protection level, and that's probably because we hadn't included that call to the base constructor. And it's a little bit hard to figure out what's wrong with your files from these errors. You'd have to dig pretty deep, which is why I'm suggesting that you look at the GitHub. So I'm going to go ahead and try to generate this project again just by double clicking the U project one more time. Now, rather promisingly, it pops up asking whether I should build the missing modules, which seems to indicate that it has got a little bit further than it did before. So I'm going to start the build process, which can take a little while. So pause the video and do your own build process at this point, and then resume the video afterwards. Now, when that's finished compiling, what you'll see here is a little bit annoying. It's saying that it could not be compiled. So as I said, everything's going to go wrong in this lecture. And when it's saying that it can't compile, what it means now is that it was able to generate the build files, but it wasn't able to compile your source code. So we pretty much know how to fix this at this point. What we can do, because we're able to generate the build files now, we don't have to open up those CS files in a separate editor. What we can do is we can generate our Visual Studio or Xcode project file by right-clicking on the U project and doing a generate Visual Studio project files, and then we can open it up in Visual Studio and locate the error, do a build, locate the error, and fix the error, so that then we can open up the editor. Here we go, we've got Visual Studio. Let's go ahead and launch it up, and then that should, here it is, coming up, and we should be able to build from that. Okay, so it seems to be giving us quite a few errors here. Let's go to our output list for a better list, and basically we want to look at the first thing. Rotate illegal qualifier name. Well, let's just see what this is. If I go and click on that error, then it's going to take me to this part of the code where we've got this utank : rotate, which is usually okay, but not in a .h file. In the C++ file, yes, that's fine, but in .h, we don't want that, and probably that's a compiler version change. Previously with Ben's older compiler, that was fine. With a newer compiler, not okay. So if we go ahead and remove that and go ahead and build now, hopefully everything will be successful. Do the same and then come back to the video. Okay, so the build has finished, and as we can see, we are still building or scanning and passing a solution for being able to do autocomplete and things like that. So it's good that we've got the Visual Studio project open at this stage. So what we can go ahead and do is open up our editor and see whether we've got any errors in the logs. So that's the last place you could be looking for errors in a project, is all the way in the logs. So we've gone through having the error when you are even generating the build file, then the build errors, and then we're going to be looking at the log file errors. Now, it can take a little while to open up a project for the first time, so pause the video and have a go at opening up the project on your own machine. Okay, so my editor has finally gone ahead and loaded. For me, that took about 5 minutes or even longer, and as you can see, it's still compiling the shaders. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is fix any bad log messages. So to do that, we have to go ahead and play. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play and get my tank to load into the scene, like so. And you can see instantly there was quite a big pause there, and the reason for that, or one of the main reasons for that, is the failure of an ensure statement that we've got somewhere in the code. In fact, 2 ensure statements. So you can see here that there are 2 big blocks of red text. Let's have a look at the first one first. So which files it say it's in? It's in AI controller CPP line 21. Let's just go direct there without even looking at the error message and see if we can guess what the problem is. So I'm going to Battle Tank, sources over in Visual Studio. This is Battle Tank private, Tank AI controller CPP, and then we said it was line 21. So there's an ensure here, sure enough, that's saying that we have a possessed tank. And if we don't, it's going to return. So what's wrong here? Why might we not have a possessed tank at this stage? Well, if you look at the previous line, it's saying that the possessed tank is equal to cast a tank, the in pawn, so the pawn that is being set on the AI controller. So what could be wrong here is that, for example, the in pawn is not a tank. So the thing being possessed by the AI controller is not a tank. When might this be the case? Well, you'll remember that Ben recently added a mortar into the scene, so this isn't going to be the case with a mortar, and the mortar's death sequence would have to be different. So we basically want to go ahead and say that if it is not a tank, then we want to go ahead and return from this. And we're not going to be adding our on-death handler, but that's okay. So we don't need to basically throw an ensure problem anymore. Now the same goes down here. If you look to the other error, it was line 42, and you can see there's another ensure here, which is basically saying the same thing, that we are able to get the control tank and the player tank. Actually, sorry, that's not the error, and is probably fine as long as we've got another player in the world, so we'll leave that in for now. What was the other error? Let's go and have a look at it. It is saying that component has begun play is a problem, and where is that? It seems to be in some line that we don't control, basically in private actor, but that seems to be coming from something else, it would appear. Failed to root begin play in tank aiming component. So it looks like maybe in tank aiming component we aren't calling super. So let's go and have a look at the tank aiming component and just double check that we're doing everything correctly there. It could also be a knock-on error. Yep, sure enough, begin play is not calling up to super : begin play. So we do need to be wary of that. You do need to call super on things that you override that are virtual. That could have been the cause of that particular error. In fact, that's a log message that I wasn't expecting to see, but it's good that we were able to solve it. So do pause the video and compile for yourself, having fixed those errors, and then come back when your compile is done. Okay, just before we go and check our errors in the log, I did just notice in the compile there were a couple of warnings in here, and we don't want warnings either in the process of compiling. So let's see what those are related to. So the first error is basically telling us that once begin play was inconsistently enforced, and basically they have removed it in later versions of Unreal, so we no longer need that. That's pretty cool, nice and simplifying the code. So then the next error is about this aiming component, and it's basically saying that here, this argument, the aim direction, is hiding another argument that we've got on the class called aim direction, not argument, sorry, but a property of the class that is called aim direction. So what we can do here is just go ahead and rename it here within our function, then move barrel towards, and we can call it the something else. And I'm going to just go ahead and call it the target aim direction instead. So it's going to be a little bit different. I can go ahead and preview the change and just apply it, because I'm fairly confident that Visual Studio knew what it was doing in renaming this. So now we're using target aim direction within here, and if we go ahead and build, we should no longer get the warnings that we were getting about hiding things and about the no longer needed once begin play. Okay, so that is now working. Let's go over to Unreal and finally just see whether we've got any errors when we start playing. Looks like not. In fact, just clear the log and make sure. If I go ahead and hit play, yep, it's all white, no red, no yellow. So I'm fairly happy that that is working, and we can go ahead and commit that and be happy. So now, just to summarize, you should be able to go ahead and upgrade any projects you find on the web that are in previous versions up to 4.19, especially our own projects. If you want to check out a particular stage in any project, then you'll be able to upgrade it to 4.19 or hopefully later up until they change things again. And you will be able to figure out a little bit better how to upgrade even further. And we've done that by going through updating the project and updating its build configurations, fixing any build errors that we might have in our C++ files or .h files, and then fixing any bad log messages. And as a bonus, we also fixed some warnings. So that's great. And hopefully you feel more confident with this upgrade process. And I'll see you in the next lecture.